Hi, my name is Sara Hume. I'm the curator here at the Kent State University Museum. Welcome to the exhibit Made in India. I'd like to take advantage of this video podcast in order to give you a little bit more information on some of the objects that are here in this exhibition. This evening dress, worn in Europe or America around 1865, features small pieces of beetle wings embroidered onto the cloth like sequins. The brilliant color of the jewel beetles is not pigment, but rather is produced through a phenomenon known as interference, created by the reflection of light through the insect's chitin. This property creates the changeable iridescent quality of the color and explains why the wings do not fade over time. This man's coat is also decorated with beetle wing embroidery. This robe, known as an angarka, dates from the final quarter of the 19th century. Although the ornamentation derives from the same species, the patterning and scale of the embroidery is significantly different. This extremely fine cotton fabric is decorated not only with embroidery, but also with woven brocaded pattern with heavier white threads woven into a finer, almost sheer ground. This brocading technique is characteristic of South India and is known as jamdani. While women's wear in India has proven largely resistant to influences from the West, menswear has undergone tremendous changes. A comparison of 3 men's jackets clearly demonstrates this transformation of elite men's wardrobes. First, we have an elaborate robe or angarka of sheer white cotton embroidered with rich gold threads, which would have been worn during the first quarter of the 20th century. At this point, wealthy Indian men continued to wear highly ornamented clothing and long, skirted robes. Through the influence of the West, such ornamental menswear was abandoned for garments that showed more restraint and structure. This jacket, made of silk with a woven rather than embroidered pattern, also dates to the early 20th century. The light color and metallic ornamentation remain consistent with the angarka, but a number of elements of Western tailoring are evident. The jacket, known as a sherwani, has set-in sleeves with carefully fitted and padded shoulders. There are buttons at the cuffs of the sleeves and down the front opening. The first leader of independent India, Jawaharlal Nehru, adopted a short version of the sherwani as part of his signature look. This jacket, which came to bear his name, gained popularity throughout not only India but also throughout Europe and America in the 1960s. Nehru jackets are easily distinguished from more conventional Western jackets by the upright mandarin collar. The next 3 garments demonstrate the complexity of the relationship between India and Western fashion, wherein India has served simultaneously as the location of clothing production and as an inspiration for designers. The first robe dates from approximately 1900 and represents the rich gold fibers and bold patterning associated with Indian design. The silk robe would have been worn by a man and features rich embroidery and a highly decorative fastening embellished with gold sequins. Tina Lesser was an American designer who designed this gold evening dress in the 1960s. She became known for adapting non-Western textiles into her clothing designs. Lesser didn't simply send to India for the production of her clothing, but also took design inspiration, as shown in this dress's intricate metallic ornamentation. The label clearly states that this dress was made in India. This brilliant gold-sequined evening jacket by Oscar de Laurento was adapted by a textile that had been made in India. The applied paisley motifs closely resemble the fastenings of the earlier man's robe. While the textiles and ornamentation hailed directly from India, de Laurento reworked the materials into a garment designed for the American market of the 1980s. Starting in the opening decades of the 19th century, European women began a nearly century-long fascination with fine woolen shawls. The first shawls were woven of goat hair and cashmere to be worn by men. Upon achieving popularity in Europe, the shawls became an essential part of the wardrobes of well-dressed women. This shawl, woven in cashmere sometime between 1860 and 1880, shows the virtuosity achieved in twill tapestry weaving. Owing to the tremendous popularity of these woven shawls, European weavers, particularly those in the Scottish town of Paisley, applied weaving innovations of the Industrial Revolution to the production of shawls that roughly imitated the cashmere originals. This particular cape-like coat, called a dolman, was made around 1880 from an older Kashmiri shawl. The vogue for shawls that reigned for most of the 19th century represented a stark contrast from the Western custom of forming clothing from textiles that were first cut, then stitched. Shawls, like many of the clothing styles from India, demanded that the uncut textile be wrapped around the body. The form of the garment would thus be fashioned by the wearer rather than the maker. By the late 19th century, as the fashion for shawls evolved, many women reworked their shawls into coats and wraps, thus imposing Western practices of clothing construction on the earlier textiles.